many of the ideas that you actually were in place in Spotify are also in place in that Nexus framework, which we're not going to talk about too much about today. The real story. Here's the real short summary. Yes, whatever you have heard or said in videos, blog posts, etc., it is true. And it's also not true. Most companies, they have one operating model, something that unifies everything that pretty much everybody tries to apply to. It's not like that 100%, right? What I learned in Spotify is that it's like, yeah, if 20% are doing the same thing, that's kind of the situation they're in. They're changing all the time, they're experimenting with everything, with their product, obviously. They have so many A/B tests that if we pull out the phones right now, we open Spotify, I would guess we have at least 20 different versions in this room right now. They have an insane amount of data collection from doing A/B testing, comparing version A and comparing version B. Which one do we like the most? So, while they experiment so much, that means that there is no one standard. There is no one way that Spotify does everything. So no, whatever you hear is also false. It's false somewhere, perhaps in many places in Spotify. They do something really great though. Regardless of this high speed of change and experiments and crazy stuff happening, they have really satisfied employees. It says 95% of the people here are super happy about working at Spotify. Would you recommend it to your friend? So they do something great, right? So my idea was to give away the key takeaways in the beginning and then we can talk about it. So this is from Joakim Sundén. Joakim is one of the Agile coaches who has been the longest with Spotify. He has quite a lot of material out there. So if you want to Google one person, Google Joakim because he knows the stuff. He really knows the history. He's been there. He's been fighting in the pits, so to say. So this is from one of his presentations. 1, identify the challenges. 2, solve it. Great. Now we can go home. No, seriously, this is from the class that he has a 2-day class with Jimmy Janlén, another coach, on how to scale with the Spotify, influenced by Spotify. So in the 2-day class, this is what they end with and start with, pretty much. Yes, there is something called the Spotify model. Primarily, other people call it the Spotify model, not Spotify themselves. But there are some keys, there are some principles, there are some values, there are some really hard truths they optimize for. And you can do that too, if you want speed, for instance. Because they want speed. They're fighting Google, Amazon, Apple, big players. Spotify was a small company. How are we going to be able to fight globally on the music market? Well, they say there's only one way we can win, and that is by having the best speed, by learning the fastest. So whatever we do, in everything we do, it is about speed. Quickly learning, quick feedback, local decision making, speeds up feedback. So this is what I thought. This is what I prepared. If we don't, we might have to change it, and that's fine. But I want to see show of hands. How many of you have read the PDF written by Anders and Henrik Kniberg, the Spotify model PDF? Okay, good. And how many of you have seen the 2 Spotify culture engineering videos? About the same. So I think those 2 videos pretty much sums it up in a good way. So I actually think that we should watch those 2. It's not very long. And afterwards, I will complement it and add a bit more information to it. But those kind of summarizes the gist of what they strive for. So instead of me doing a crappy presentation, here is a well-prepared presentation that someone spent weeks on doing. And then I'm going to show my examples and some ideas. Jason Jip is another coach in New York. We're going to look at some of the challenges that he has also presented to everybody that we can talk about. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll do some Q&A.
One of the big success factors here at Spotify is our agile engineering culture. Culture tends to be invisible. We don't notice it because it's there all the time, kind of like the air we breathe. But if everyone understands the culture, we're more likely to be able to keep it and even strengthen it as we grow. So that's the purpose of this video. When our first music player was launched in 2008, we were pretty much a Scrum company. Scrum is a well-established agile development approach, and it gave us a nice team-based culture. However, a few years later, we had grown into a bunch of teams and found that some of the standard Scrum practices were actually getting in the way. So we decided to make all this optional. Rules are a good start, but then break them when needed. We decided that Agile matters more than Scrum, and Agile principles matter more than any specific practices. So we renamed the Scrum Master role to Agile Coach, because we wanted servant leaders more than process masters. We also started using the term squad instead of Scrum team, and our key driving force became autonomy. So what is an autonomous squad? A squad is a small, cross-functional, self-organizing team, usually less than 8 people. They sit together and they have end-to-end responsibility for the stuff they build. Design, commit, deploy, maintenance, operations, the whole thing. Each squad has a long-term mission, such as make Spotify the best place to discover music, or internal stuff like infrastructure for A/B testing. Autonomy basically means that the squad decides what to build, how to build it, and how to work together while doing it. There are, of course, some boundaries to this, such as the squad mission, the overall product strategy for whatever area they are working on, and short-term goals that are renegotiated every quarter. Our office is optimized for collaboration. Here's a typical squad area. The squad members work closely together here with adjustable desks and easy access to each other's screens. They gather over here in the lounge for things like planning sessions and retrospectives. And back there is a huddle room for smaller meetings or just to get some quiet time. Almost all walls are whiteboards. So why is autonomy so important? Well, because it's motivating, and motivated people build better stuff. Also, autonomy makes us fast by letting decisions happen locally in the squad instead of via a bunch of managers and committees and stuff. It helps us minimize handoffs and waiting so we can scale without getting bogged down with dependencies and coordination. Although each squad has its own mission, they need to be aligned with product strategy, company priorities, and other squads. Basically, be a good citizen in the Spotify ecosystem. Spotify's overall mission is more important than any individual squad. So the key principle is really be autonomous, but don't sub-optimize. It's kind of like a jazz band. Although each musician is autonomous and plays his own instrument, they listen to each other and focus on the whole song together. That's how great music is created. So our goal is loosely coupled, but tightly aligned squads. We're not all there yet, but we experiment a lot with different ways of getting closer. In fact, that applies to most things in this video. This culture description is really a mix of what we are today and what we are trying to become in the future. Alignment and autonomy may seem like different ends of a scale, as in more autonomy equals less alignment. However, we think of it more like two different dimensions. Down here is low alignment and low autonomy, a micromanagement culture. No high-level purpose, just shut up and follow orders. Up here is high alignment, but still low autonomy. So leaders are good at communicating what problem needs to be solved, but they're also telling people how to solve it. High alignment and high autonomy means leaders focus on what problem to solve, but let the teams figure out how to solve it. What about down here then? Low alignment and high autonomy means teams do whatever they want and basically all run in different directions. Leaders are helpless and our product becomes a Frankenstein. We're trying hard to be up here. Aligned autonomy. And we keep experimenting with different ways of doing that. So alignment enables autonomy. The stronger alignment we have, the more autonomy we can afford to grant. That means the leader's job is to communicate what problem needs to be solved and why, and the squads collaborate with each other to find the best solution. One consequence of autonomy is that we have very little standardization. When people ask things like, which code editor do you use, or how do you plan? The answer is mostly, depends on which squad. Some do Scrum sprints, others do Kanban. Some estimate stories and measure velocity, others don't. It's really up to each squad. Instead of formal standards, we have a strong culture of cross-pollination. When enough squads use a specific practice or tool, such as Git, that becomes the path of least resistance, and other squads tend to pick the same tool. Squads start supporting that tool and helping each other, and it becomes like a de facto standard. This informal approach gives us a healthy balance between consistency and flexibility. Our architecture is based on over 100 separate systems coded and deployed independently. There's plenty of interaction, but each system focuses on one specific need, such as playlist management, search, or monitoring. We try to keep them small and decoupled with clear interfaces and protocols. Technically, each system is owned by one squad. In fact, most squads own several. But we have an internal open source model, and our culture is more about sharing than owning. Suppose Squad 1 here needs something done in System B, and Squad 2 knows that code best. They'll typically ask Squad 2 to do it. However, if Squad 2 doesn't have time, or they have other priorities, then Squad 1 doesn't necessarily need to wait. We hate waiting. Instead, they are welcome to go ahead and edit the code themselves, and then ask Squad 2 to review the changes. So anyone can edit any code, but we have a culture of peer code review. This improves quality and, more importantly, spreads knowledge. Over time, we've evolved design guidelines, code standards, and other things to reduce engineering friction, but only when badly needed. So on a scale from authoritative to liberal, we're definitely more on the liberal side. Now, none of this would work if it wasn't for the people. We have a really strong culture of mutual respect. I keep hearing comments like, "My colleagues are awesome." People often give credit to each other for great work and seldom take credit for themselves. Considering how much talent we have here, there is surprisingly little ego. One big aha for new hires is that autonomy is kind of scary at first. You and your squad mates are expected to find your own solution. No one will tell you what to do. But it turns out, if you ask for help, you get lots of it, and fast. There's genuine respect for the fact that we're all in this boat together and need to help each other succeed. We focus a lot on motivation. Here's an example, an actual email from the head of people operations. "Hi everyone, our employee satisfaction survey says 91% enjoy working here and 4% don't." Now that may seem like a pretty high satisfaction rate, especially considering our growth pain. From 2006 to 2013, we've doubled every year and now have over 1,200 people. But then he continues, "This is of course not satisfactory and we want to fix it. If you're one of those unhappy 4%, please contact us. We're here for your sake and nothing else." So good enough isn't good enough. Half a year later, things had improved and satisfaction rate was up to 94%. With this strong focus on motivation, it's no coincidence that we have such an awesome reputation as workplace. Nevertheless, we do have plenty of problems to deal with, so we need to keep improving. Okay, so we have over 50 squads spread across 4 cities. Some kind of structure is needed. Currently, squads are grouped into tribes. A tribe is a lightweight matrix. Each person is a member of a squad as well as a chapter. The squad is the primary dimension, focusing on product delivery and quality, while the chapter is a competency area, such as quality assistance, agile coaching, or web development. As squad member, my chapter lead is my formal line manager, a servant leader focusing on coaching and mentoring me as engineer, so I can switch squads without getting a new manager. It's a pretty picture, huh? Except that it's not really true. In reality, the lines aren't nice and straight, and things keep changing. Here's a real-life example from one moment in time for one tribe. And of course, it's all different by now. And that's okay. The most valuable communication happens in informal and unpredictable ways. To support this, we also have guilds. A guild is a lightweight community of interest, where people across the whole company gather and share knowledge within a specific area. For example, leadership, web development, or continuous delivery. Anyone can join or leave a guild at any time. Guilds typically have a mailing list, biannual on-conferences, and other informal communication methods. Most organizational charts are an illusion, so our main focus is community rather than hierarchical structures. We've found that a strong enough community can get away with an informal, volatile structure. If you always need to know exactly who is making decisions, you're in the wrong place. One thing that matters a lot for autonomy is how easily can we get our stuff into production. If releasing is hard, we'll be tempted to release seldom to avoid the pain. That means each release is bigger and therefore even harder. It's a vicious cycle. But if releasing is easy, we can release often. That means each release is smaller and therefore easier. To stay in this loop and avoid that one, we encourage small, frequent releases and invest heavily in test automation and continuous delivery infrastructure. Release should be routine, not drama. Sometimes we make big investments to make releasing easier. For example, the original Spotify desktop client was a single monolithic application. In the early days, with just a handful of developers, that was fine. But as we grew, this became a huge problem. Dozens of squads had to synchronize with each other for each release, and it could take months to get a stable version. Instead of creating lots of process and rules and stuff to manage this, we changed the architecture to enable decoupled releases. Using Chromium Embedded Framework, the client is now basically a web browser in disguise. Each section is like a frame on a website, and squads can release their own stuff directly. As part of this architectural change, we started seeing each client platform as a client app, and evolved 3 different flavors of squads: client app squads, feature squads, and infrastructure squads. A feature squad focuses on one feature area, such as search. This squad will build, ship, and maintain search-related features on all platforms. A client app squad focuses on making release easy on one specific client platform, such as desktop, iOS, or Android. Infrastructure squads focus on making other squads more effective. They provide tools and routines for things like continuous delivery, A/B testing, monitoring, and operations. Regardless of the current structure, we always strive for a self-service model. Kind of like a buffet. The restaurant staff don't serve you directly. They enable you to serve yourself. So we avoid handoffs like the plague. For example, an operations squad or client app squad does not put code into production for people. Instead, their job is to make it easy for feature squads to put their own code into production. Despite the self-service model, we sometimes need a bit of sync between squads when doing releases. We manage this using release trains and feature toggles. Each client app has a release train that departs on a regular schedule, typically every week or every 3 weeks, depending on which client. Just like in the physical world, if trains depart frequently and reliably, you don't need much upfront planning. Just show up and take the next train. Suppose these 3 squads are building stuff, and when the next release train arrives, features A, B, and C are done, while D is still in progress. The release train will include all 4 features, but the unfinished one is hidden using a feature toggle. It may sound weird to release unfinished features and hide them, but it's nice because it exposes integration problems early and minimizes the need for code branches. Unmerged code hides problems and is a form of technical debt. Feature toggles let us dynamically show and hide stuff in test as well as production. In addition to hiding unfinished work, we use this to A/B test and gradually roll out finished features. All in all, our release process is better than it used to be, but we still see plenty of improvement areas, so we'll keep experimenting. This may seem like a scary model, letting each squad put their own stuff into production without any form of centralized control. And we do screw up sometimes, but we've learned that trust is more important than control. Why would we hire someone who we don't trust? Agile at scale requires trust at scale, and that means no politics. It also means no fear. Fear doesn't just kill trust, it kills innovation. Because if failure gets punished, people won't dare try new things. So let's talk about failure. Actually, no. Let's take a break. Get on your feet, get some coffee, let this stuff sink in for a bit, and then come back when you're ready for part 2, okay?
So get on your feet. Talk to your neighbor for 2 minutes. Is this your culture that he is describing? Is something different? 2 minutes. Let's look at the second part, is 13 minutes, and then I'll add some of my own experience.
Hey, you're back. Great. Now, you've probably forgotten all about part 1, so let's do a quick recap. Our culture is based on Agile principles. All engineering happens in squads, and we try to keep them loosely coupled and tightly aligned. We like cross-pollination and have an internal open source model for code. Squads do small and frequent releases, which is enabled by decoupling. Our self-service model minimizes the need for handoffs, and we use release trains and feature toggles to get stuff into production early and often. And since culture is all about the people, we focus on motivation, community, and trust, rather than structure and control. That was part 1. And now, I'd like to talk about failure. Our founder Daniel put it nicely. We aim to make mistakes faster than anyone else. Yeah, I know, sounds a bit crazy, but here's the idea. To build something really cool, we will inevitably make mistakes along the way, right? But each failure is also a learning. So when we do fail, we want it to happen fast so we can learn fast and therefore improve fast. It's a strategy for long-term success. It's like with kids. You can keep a toddler in the crib and she'll be safe, but she won't learn much and won't be very happy. If you instead let her run around and explore the world, she'll fail and fall sometimes, but she'll be happier and develop faster. And the wounds, well, they usually heal. So Spotify is a fail-friendly environment. We're more interested in fast failure recovery than failure avoidance. Our internal blog has articles like Celebrate Failure and stories like How We Shot Ourselves in the Foot. Some squads even have a fail wall where people show off their latest failures and learnings. Failing without learning is, well, just failing. So when something goes wrong, we usually follow up with a post-mortem. This is never about whose fault was it. It's about what happened. What did we learn? What will we change? Post-mortems are actually part of our incident management workflow. So an incident ticket isn't closed when the problem is solved. It's closed when we've captured the learnings to avoid the same problem in the future. Fix the process, not just the product. In addition, all squads do retrospectives every few weeks to talk about what's working well and what to improve next. All in all, Spotify has a strong culture of continuous improvement, driven from below and supported from above. However, failure must be non-lethal, or we don't live to fail again. So we promote the concept of limited blast radius. The architecture is quite decoupled, so if a squad makes a mistake, it will usually only impact a small part of the system and not bring everything down. And since the squad has end-to-end responsibility for their stuff without handoffs, they can usually fix the problem fast. Also, most new features are rolled out gradually, starting with just a tiny percent of all users, and closely monitored. Once the feature proves to be stable, we gradually roll it out to the rest of the world. So if something goes wrong, it normally only affects a small part of the system, for a small number of users, for a short period of time. This limited blast radius gives squads courage to do lots of small experiments and learn really fast, instead of wasting time trying to predict and control all risk in advance. Mario Andretti puts it nicely. If everything's under control, you're going too slow. Alright, let's talk about product development. Our product development approach is based on lean startup principles and is summarized by the mantra, think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. The biggest risk is always building the wrong thing. So before deciding to build a new product or major feature, we try to inform ourselves with research. Do people actually want this? Does it solve a real problem for them? Then we define a narrative, kind of like a press release or elevator pitch, showing off the benefits. For example, radio you can save or follow your favorite artist. We also define hypotheses. How will this feature impact user behavior and our core metrics? Will they share more music? Will they log in more often? And we build various prototypes and have people try them out to get a sense of what the feature might feel like and how people react. Once we feel confident this thing is worth building, we go ahead and build an MVP, minimum viable product. Just enough to fulfill the narrative, but far from feature complete. You might call it the minimum lovable product. The next stage of learning happens once we put something into production, so we want to get there as quickly as possible. We release the MVP to just a few percent of all users, and use techniques like A/B testing to measure the impact and test our hypotheses. The squad monitors the data and continues tweaking and redeploying until they see the desired impact. Then they gradually roll out to the rest of the world, while taking the time needed to sort out practical stuff like operational issues and scaling. By the time the product or feature is fully rolled out, we already know it's a success, because if it isn't, we don't roll it out. Impact is always more important than velocity, so a feature isn't really considered done until it has achieved the desired impact. Note that, like most things in this video, this is how we try to work, but our actual track record, of course, varies. Now, with all this experimentation going on, how do we actually plan? How do we know what's going to be released by which date? Well, the short answer is we mostly don't. We care more about innovation than predictability, and 100% predictability means 0% innovation. On a scale, we'd probably be somewhere around here. Of course, sometimes we do need to make delivery commitments, like for partner integrations or marketing events. And that sometimes involves standard agile planning techniques, like velocity and burn-up charts. But if we have to promise a date, we generally defer that commitment until the feature is already proven and close to ready. By minimizing the need for predictability, squads can focus on delivering value, instead of being a slave to someone's arbitrary plan. One product owner said, "I think of my squad as a group of volunteers that are here to work on something they are super passionate about." So where do ideas come from? An amazing new product always starts with a person, and a spark of inspiration. But it will only become real if people are allowed to play around and try things out. So we encourage everyone to spend about 10% of their time doing hack days or hack weeks. That's when people get to experiment and build whatever they want. Like this dial a song product. Just pick it up and dial the number of the song you want to listen to. Is it useful? Does it matter? The point is, if we try enough ideas, we're bound to strike gold from time to time. And quite often, the knowledge gained is worth more than the actual hack itself. Plus, it's fun. As part of this, we do a Spotify-wide hack week twice per year. Hundreds of people hacking away for a whole week. The mantra is, make cool things real. Build whatever you want, with whoever you want, in whatever way you want. And then we have a big demo and party on Friday. We're always surprised by how much cool stuff can be built in just a week with this kind of creative freedom. Whether it's a helicopter made of lollipop sticks or a whole new way of discovering music. Turns out that innovation isn't really that hard. People are natural innovators, so just get out of their way and let them try things out. In general, our culture is very experiment-friendly. For example, should we use tool A or tool B? Don't know. Let's try both and compare. Or do we really need sprint planning meetings? Don't know. Let's skip a few and see if we miss them. Or should we show 5 or 10 top songs on the artist page? Don't know. Let's test both and measure the impact. Even the Spotify-wide Hack Week started as an experiment, and now it's part of the culture. So instead of arguing an issue to death, we try to talk about things like, what's the hypothesis? And what did we learn? And what will we try next? This gives us more data-driven decisions and less opinion-driven, ego-driven, or authority-driven decisions. Although we are happy to experiment and try different ways of doing things, our culture is very waste-repellent. People will quickly stop doing anything that doesn't add value. If it works, keep it. Otherwise, dump it. For example, some things that work for us so far are retrospectives, daily stand-ups, Google Docs, Git, and Guild on conferences. And some things that don't work for us are time reports, handoffs, separate test teams or test phases, and task estimates. We mostly just don't do these things. We're also strongly allergic to useless meetings and anything remotely near corporate BS. One common source of waste is what we call big projects. Basically anything that requires a lot of squads to work tightly coordinated for many months. Big project means big risk, so we are organized to minimize the need, and instead try hard to break projects into a series of smaller efforts. Sometimes, however, there is a good reason to do a big project, and the potential benefits outweigh the risks. And in those cases, we've found some practices to be essential. Visualize progress using various combinations of physical and electronic boards. Do a daily sync meeting, where all squads involved meet up to resolve dependencies. Do a demo every week or two, where all the pieces come together, so we can evaluate the integrated product together with stakeholders. These practices reduce risk and waste because of the improved collaboration and short feedback loop. We've also found that a project needs a small, tight leadership group to keep an eye on the big picture. Typically we have a tech lead, a product lead, and sometimes a design lead working tightly together. On the whole, we're still experimenting a lot with how to do big projects, and we're not so good at it yet. One thing we keep wrestling with is growth pain. As we grow, we risk falling into chaos. But if we overcompensate and add too much structure and process, we risk getting stuck in bureaucracy instead. And that's even worse. So the key question is really, what is the minimum viable bureaucracy? The least amount of structure and process we can get away with to avoid total chaos. Both sides cause waste, but in different ways. So the waste-repellent culture and agile mindset helps us stay balanced. The key thing about reducing waste is to visualize it and talk about it often. So in addition to retrospectives and postmortems, many squads and tribes have big visible improvement boards that show things like what's blocking us and what are we doing about it. We also like to talk about definition of awesome. For example, awesome for this squad means things like really finishing stuff, easily ramping up new team members, and no recurring tasks or bugs. And our definition of awesome architecture includes, I can build, test, and ship my feature within a week. I use data to learn from it, and my improved version is live in week 2. Keep in mind though, awesome is a direction, not a place, so it doesn't even have to be realistic. But if we can agree on what awesome would look like, it helps focus our improvement efforts and track progress. Here's an example of an improvement tracking board inspired by a lean technique called Toyota Kata. Top left shows what is the current situation. In this case, the squad was having quality problems. Bottom left shows definition of awesome. In a perfect world, we'd have no quality problems at all. Top right is a realistic target condition. If we were one step closer to awesome, what would that look like? And finally, the bottom right shows the next 3 concrete actions that will move us towards the target condition. As these get done, the squad fills it up with new actions. Boards like this live on the wall in the squad room and are typically followed up at the next retrospective. Alright, I realize that maybe this video makes it seem like everything at Spotify is just great. Well, truth is, we have plenty of problems to deal with. And I could give you a long list of pain points. But I won't, because it would go out of date quickly. We grow fast and change fast, and quite often a seemingly brilliant solution today will cause a nasty new problem tomorrow, just because we've grown and everything is different. However, most problems are short-lived, because people actually do something about it. This company is pretty good at changing the architecture, process, organization, or whatever is needed to solve a problem. And that's really the key point. Healthy culture heals broken process. Since culture is so important, we put a lot of effort into strengthening it. This video is just one small example. No one actually owns culture, but we do have quite a lot of people focusing on it. Groups such as People Operations, and about 30 or so Agile coaches spread across all squads. And we do boot camps, where new hires form a temporary squad. They get to solve a real problem, while also learning about our tech stack and processes, and learning to work together as a team, all in 1 week. It's an intense but fun way to really get the culture. They often manage to put code into production in that time, which is impressive. But again, failing is perfectly okay, as long as they learn. Mainly though, culture spreads through storytelling. Whether it happens on the blog, at a postmortem, a demo, or at lunch, as long as we keep sharing our successes and failures and learnings with each other, I think the culture will stay healthy. At the end of the day, culture in any organization is really just the sum of everyone's attitudes and actions. You are the culture, so model the behavior you want to see. That's it. We're done. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so let's do the same thing to not fall asleep this late in the evening. Stand up, talk about something that's different. 3 minutes. So, I'm going to add some information to this. And obviously, everything that he talks about, I have seen every piece of it in real life. This actually exists. Everything they do, everything he talks about, someone is doing it somewhere inside Spotify. I've never seen everything everywhere. Not one single squad is doing everything that he talks about. So there's exceptions to exactly everything as well. Perhaps the only exception, which there is no exception for, so the one thing that is true is this thing about experimentation. Everybody has there in their DNA, in their culture, the boot week, the boot camp when you're thrown into, you're going to do something and you're going to ship it. At the end of the week, everybody in the company is going to see what you built in this boot camp. Because when you do stuff, when you work on the real product, it's going live as well. So start getting used to it. You need to produce stuff quickly. So experimentation is really a key part of the culture. It happens everywhere, even inside finance and those areas. Very interesting. So a quick, something I'd like to focus and emphasize if it's not already clear. He said many times, this is part of what we are today. This is part of what we want to become. They want to see much of this everywhere, but it's not really what happens. And not every squad works the same. Okay, so what is a squad? Did everyone get this, or any question about what a squad is? Or how they work? What it looks like in real life?
They work together. Cross-functional team with a mission.
They work together, it's a cross-functional team. They do have a mission. Every squad does have a very clear mission. It's clearly stated and typically hangs on a whiteboard, or someone has made a really cool poster about it, or a fun poster, or a boring poster because they think it's boring but important. So wherever you go, you can quickly see, yes, this is what they're working on.
And how do you decide when to build a new squad for something?
When to decide how to build a new squad? Who decides? So I have a slide later on that says agility what, What agile? So agility to me talks about three things. And I'm going to draw, I didn't plan this, but so one thing they really, so agility for me is about technical agility. Being able to quickly ship with high quality or good enough quality, it doesn't break. We learn quickly, we gather metrics. Another phrase for this is technical excellence. Are we good at doing user studies? Are we good at programming? Are we good at all of those things that you do as a team to build a product? So technical agility is one area, and I will get to your answer to your question. Another area is organizational agility. How quickly can we align when we decide that, hey, let's give up this idea of building this product, it doesn't work. One example is running with Spotify. They had this app, part of the app was optimized for running, for when people go out jogging. So it could detect how often you put your feet down, and they would find music that will follow your pace and stuff like that. It worked, great product, runners loved it, but not enough people. So they decided to kill it, because essentially it was just removing focus from the organization on what they wanted to accomplish. So they closed that down, and they decided to go for a new bet, a new initiative. And I've never seen an organization so quickly reorganize, to get people to understand what are we doing, why are we doing it, to find the new missions for every squad.
Yeah, but whose job is this?
So whose job is this? Oh, someone that's... It's about this one here, which is market or product or business agility, whatever you want to call it. This is top CEO, pretty much, Daniel, with a couple of people doing product management, or whatever you want to call it. They have company bets. There's information about this if you Google as well. And it's visible to everybody. Everybody understands what we're doing and how long, if we're going to continue to invest in it for another perhaps quarter or 6 months or something like that. So people see when actually the bets are starting to go down, and they realize something new is going to happen. And here are a couple of things. The tribes take on these bets. They break parts of it down, or they take the entire bet and they make it theirs. And then they break that down into what can we do with squads. Do we need to reorganize? Do we create new squads? So I would say it happened inside those tribes. But again, Spotify doesn't work in one way. So you might discover that one squad decides, actually, we don't need to exist anymore. So we're going to close it off and we're going to go find something else.
Basically, for example, there's something new to develop, an idea, let's say. So there's build a tribe, and then the tribe decides how many squads are needed to make happen what is okay.
That was a long question, so congratulations.
Okay, so again. So basically there is an idea, yeah, and there's a decision made that there is needed a tribe. So the tribe decides how many squads are needed to solve create the idea to make it live.
Something like that. I'm serious. I cannot give you a perfect answer because it changes. I was there for some time, and during that time I saw different ways of these decisions being made. But typically Daniel has a strong vision for what we're going to do as a company, and this trickles down into the organization in terms of goals and bets, and we bring data to those bets to see if it's actually true, etc. But the tribe has a tribe leader. That person makes sure that the environment works. The tribe has chapters, and in those chapters you have chapter leaders. They're kind of like a line manager. They help create meaningful ways for people to work. Essentially find, where do you want to work? Can I support you in moving to another squad? Can I help you in some way? Personal, professional development. But again, this role called chapter lead, that's the one that has, it's so different depending on who did the job. Some were very classical. You can find the exact same line manager role in Ericsson. So that I saw that. Some chapter leads were programmers that spent 90% of the time programming and 10% doing line management, which essentially was, hey, are you feeling okay? Good, thank you. Well, that was a very short version, but perhaps they only spent like, so 1 day per every sprint. And then they had one-to-ones with everybody in their chapter. And that was all they did. And they didn't have to do anything else.
I have one more question about the tribe leader. What is exactly the role of such a person?
I don't know.
Is it more like management, or is it more like, I don't know.
Yes.
It's hard to define for me right now after what you said, basically. Because it's somebody, let's say it's kind of owner, and is it somebody who manages squads?
Yes and no.
No, yes. I thought so, but...
Primarily no, they don't define... No, the tribe leader doesn't define the squads, doesn't define exactly what to do. They do this with help. They are primarily a servant leader, meaning they likely have some time, perhaps budget, that they can invest in what other people say that they should do. So the tribe leaders try to not have ideas. They really are the servant leader. They go and say, hey, what do you need? How can I help you? Yeah. And that becomes their backlog on what to do. But it is a lot of this is self-organizing. People figure this out, and it's a lot about the communities. And when you have so many communities that people travel to, and I'm sure you heard that anyone in Spotify can travel wherever they want to, when they need to, and when they think they need to. You don't need approval. It's like, yes. Why are you asking me if you can go? You know better. That started to change during the time I was there, because they were introduced to the, to the market, IPO, initial offering, etc. So by then they started to look at what are some structures we perhaps need to change to be more predictable on economic terms. So I think that started to change the culture a bit. And I was not with them when they did the final stuff and final stages. So, but that started to change. But before that, for so many years, if you needed to go and be somewhere, you went. Just get the ticket, here's the receipt, and then you go. No questions asked. A lot of trust. And to be able to have that...
Cash.
Sorry?
And a lot of spare cash.
And a lot of?
Spare cash.
Spare cash?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that Spotify has not made money for the first 10, 12 years or something like that, and that is true. I mean, they were negatively, they were red numbers. But the owners were pretty much the music industry, right? So the music industry, they invested in Spotify, and what they got in return was, people use their services, their music, instead of Napster or some other pirate peer-to-peer solution. So the music industry was, we're losing some money, but people use our services and they like our music, and we can learn about our users. So, and they thought that eventually it will start leveling out, I guess.
Give some examples of tribes.
Examples of tribes. I haven't prepared this. The one I was working closely with was the core experience. If you Google this, you can find it from Joachim Sundén. He has public information on this. So one tribe I was working with was core experience, which was part of an alliance, which was much bigger. I don't remember the exact name, but like the offering to customers. So in core experience, we had stuff like playback, making sure that music actually streams. How can we optimize this? I mean, if I hit play on Spotify, you will have music within a number of milliseconds. Ideally, under 100, 300 milliseconds is okay, different for different markets, etc. So there was one tribe focusing on stuff like that. Another one was more on user experience, so whenever you like, of say this is a favorite, it gets saved somewhere. That information is available to other squads, so they can find out some things like your daily mix and all of those things.
So again, how do you organize into tribes? Who decides how many squads are there and what the tribe is going to take care of?
You start by looking at what do we need to accomplish. The work that we're going to do, what does that look like? And this can be tuned and turned in different directions. And after that, you start looking at, okay, what are the teams or tribes that we need, that we think is necessary for this? This is a coordination of the people that are more closely to the problem.
Yeah, but the people who decide are the people from this organizational part. Who are they? I mean, are the squads just decide, okay, today we go into that tribe, or for the next 6 months we go into that tribe, organize into that tribe, or someone decides, okay, let's create another tribe for this or that?
You typically ask, again, this is very different from what most people are organized, used to.
I mean, based on experience, how it works.
So based on how it works, we have this picture, I don't have it prepared, but there's a slide on Google Docs with these are the company bets. It's only 10 here which we're focusing on right now. Here are the next 10 we might do, and here is an unfiltered list of ideas for the future. So you can see exactly what we're doing right now and what tribe or alliance is focusing on what. And people will see what's coming next. So this information is publicly available. And whenever you see, hey, this is something we want to start up, a new bet initiative we want to focus on, essentially the question goes out, is there anyone here that think they can take this on? Because that means they will stop doing something, right? Even though they're expanding super fast, we still typically need to stop doing something. So that's just an open question. Is there a tribe here that could take on this bet? Is there one tribe here which is better positioned to take on this bet? Can you do something? What do you need to stop to doing? Can someone else take that? So I can't talk about all of the experiments I've seen, but we did close down a couple of things in order to get on a new initiative, a new bet. And after that, we thought about, do we have the right organization to do this? Do we have the right squads? Can we change this? Can we keep the team, but get a new mission? So that typically happened.
But these decisions come from board, CEO, or some group of people that take care about this organizational stuff. Who makes some decisions? Because I think, well, I cannot imagine that we do all people do it, and there is too much chaos probably with this. So someone.
So let me join the conversation. As I captured from these 2 short movies,
yep.
There is one big role, mentor, in the Spotify organization, and it was said that everybody can be a mentor to other person.
Yep.
So as I understood, this mentor is a key role in this Agile organization. Am I right or not?
I imagine that to most people here, this sounds like a very strange thing, like a fluffy pink thing in the air, which doesn't exist, but it does. And yes, it is very different. I have a quote here from the HR manager, Katarina Berg. She says this: let's be clear, our way of working is unique, but it is definitely not perfect. We make mistakes and we realize that we don't have the answers to all the questions. As we're growing so quickly, new challenges arise every day, and the biggest challenge are to attract the right people and to harness our innovation, agility, and unique culture while welcoming 100 new employees to the team every month. So whatever I observed during my time at that place, it is different now. Not everything, but a lot of things are different because they move so quickly and they need to move so quickly in order to ramp up to fight Google, etc. So I guess the trend when I was there was that they were moving towards more classical decision making and structures, but I don't think they moved all the way. I hope they did not. And yes, a lot of decision making happening on the floor. I'd like to go through some of the things I have here and then I'll take more questions. Is that okay? Yeah, I think it makes more sense. So, chapters, tribes, guilds, we can talk about that later if you want to, but it's just go out and see. This is looks almost like traditional matrix, right? With line management, etc. And it's, for many parts, it's not that different. This idea, though, I want you to focus on this. At some point in time, this was true, is what it says in the PDF, the thing that documents how they work. It's not exactly, so back in 2012, that's 7 years ago, that's what it might have looked like back then. But then they've had 7 years to try new things out. So whatever we're reading and we're doing, it's likely, or watching, it's likely different now. How fast are they growing? We talked about this just previously. This is information back in 2012. This is when this paper was published. 24 million users, 6 million paying users, about 300 developers. This is the most recent information I've seen that is public. 2 years old, 70 million subscribers. So from 2012, you see that's a huge growth. It's like exponential, not really exponential, but it's really fast. And the same thing goes for employees. And this was up to 2012, and I can assure you they continued when I was there as well. So how can you make this work if you have a classical structure with, well, you don't. You need to flip the pyramid and really have servant leadership and make as many decisions as possible locally. Otherwise, you cannot scale. So how do you get people to align? If everyone is making their own decisions, how do we know we're not breaking it for anyone else? So I'd like to do a quick check here. And you need to help me out with this one. Chris, and yeah, I'm gonna need your help. So, if you all think about a really great project that you have seen, been part of, perhaps, hopefully, a really great project. What do you think of? Just shout things out now.
Problem that needs to be solved.
A problem to be solved?
People.
Great people.
In one place.
Sorry, what about budget?
Limitless.
Unlimited budget, okay? Great.
Meaningful goal.
Meaningful goals, excellent. Validated learning.
Happy customers.
Happy customers. All right.
New technology.
New tech.
Satisfaction.
Whose satisfaction?
Everyone.
Ours.
Our and everyone's satisfaction. Including employees, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's satisfaction. All right. I have room for 2 more.
Maybe even getting some heaven points from this business.
Heaven points.
Yeah.
What is heaven points?
Trying to help to someone like for disabled people or something like this.
Oh. Ah, okay.
Or
So
for
this.
environment.
So this actually, when I come to heaven, I get some good score.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only then.
Yeah. From God. Yeah. Okay, this is good enough. Can I ask you to cut? So thank you all for contributing to this list. Can you hang it on this one behind you? Now forget everything about what you just thought of. And think about something perhaps more personal. Think of a product that you like. A product that you use perhaps every day. Something you would really be sad if you lost. You couldn't use it anymore. It could be a product or a service. So what do you think about now? What comes to mind when you think about this great product? Design is one thing I heard. What about the design?
Simple.
Simple. Intuitive. Someone said lovable.
Great user experience.
Great user experience.
Content.
Some content.
Always available.
Always available. Fast. Unbreakable. Sounds like a movie. Furious fast.
That's a
Useful, someone said, right?
Or just something we are attached to. Or just something we are attached to. We are used to.
Attached to. I'm going to summarize it with that. Yeah.
Challenging, improving.
It improves. Does it improve you or does it the product improve?
Like improve the way that I'm living.
Improve living. It makes my life better in some way.
Or easier.
Yeah. Improve or easier, etc. Yeah. And someone said something about free. I'm going to say, yeah, worth it, right? It's worth it.
The product understands me as a user.
Product understands me. Thank you. I'm going to say that's enough. Understands me. So we have two lists now. And this is related to Spotify. Someone tell me what the difference is.
Okay, so project is a way and product is a goal.
A way, a goal. Okay. Anything else?
great product delivers great product.
You saying great projects deliver great products? Mm-hmm. Are you sure?
Why not?
It might help, right? If people are engaged, happy, have fun times, and good goals, we could get a great product. Yeah?
There is some kind of difference because I think this is what we want to do and this is what we want to use.
Now we're getting there. He just said, this is what we do, this is what we want to get. And I would say, if you get this, this will work out. How do you align 2,000 people making daily decisions? Well, one thing I learned is that whenever you make a decision in your squad, you send an email. You send an email to decisions@spotify.com or something like that. Everybody shares their decisions because there are so many decisions made, and you're not supposed to wait for a decision to be made. You don't wait to synchronize with people unless you absolutely have to. Make the decision and send it out to everybody. And then everybody can see what decisions have been made and how to adjust if needed or get some feedback. I'm simplifying a bit, but to be honest, this email list was super interesting to watch. And it goes out to everybody.
Who reads those?
Who reads those?
If there's so
How
many
many a day?
decisions.
Everybody.
So how many emails came a day?
A day, I say somewhere between 5 and 50. I'm just guessing now. But yes, lots of decisions were made. And yes, this was one way to start sharing those decisions. What did we learn? Here's the decision we made. If you really want to read more, talk to this person or watch this slide or this video or whatever.
How many years ago this was?
About 2 years ago. So what is different here? I'm just going to emphasize again. This is about internal stuff. Right? This is how we think about projects. We focus on validated learning, having meaningful goal. A budget is a concern, great people. If you think about technology and happy customers, that's in there as well. Is this what people buy? Is this what people buy when they buy Spotify?
No.
No. This is what they buy. Right? So this is the thing we need to align on. So Spotify made this very clear. These are two of the most important metrics inside Spotify. How many people are actively using our product? On a daily basis, on a monthly basis. Whatever change you do to your product, to our product, these two are not supposed to go down. So whenever they do changes and do A/B testing, etc., you will see something that looks like this. This is for the A group. We can see that when we introduced functionality 2, this was used much more and this was reduced. This came up, this went down, and the other ones here are not statistically significant. So they are not data-driven, but they are data-informed, heavily data-informed. This might be an okay thing if this is a very big new thing that we believe in, right? But at least we get this data and we want to be statistically verifiable, so to speak. So here's another thing that they use quite heavily. They use the DIBs. We want to have some data, insights, beliefs, and bets. And this is a very old example. They saw that actually people listening to music, not looking at music, but listening to music on the desktop, it's decreasing, and mobile usage is increasing. But our staff looks like this. 95% work on desktop stuff, and they have desktop skills. Perhaps that's a bad match. And I think this was at least 10 years ago. So the insight is as mobile is overtaking desktop, perhaps we should change. We're optimizing for the wrong thing. So let's start to create a bet around this. Hire mobile devs, retrain people, build infrastructure to iterate fast on mobile. So that's a couple of things that I really learned. Here, invest super heavily in architecture that supports teams to do the valuable work. So that was one example on the previous slide. How can we iterate quickly on the mobile phone when we have to go through Google and Apple every time we make a release? Google and Apple kind of controls our release pace and how often we can deliver. And we can't have every squad make a new release of the app, because then we will have new release, like 10 releases every day. No sane Spotify user is going to be happy about having updates every hour, right? So how can we iterate faster without having people say, hey, you have a new version, you have a new version, you have a new version? You build architecture and platforms and tools that allows you to deploy on the server side, and the client just picks instructions and renders it. Kind of like old web technology. But it really works, and this allows them to iterate much faster. They don't have to wait for a synchronized, slow update. And this was not for cheap, not for free, but it was totally worth it. It gave them a lot of speed. So investing in this architecture to allow your teams to really operate and do great work, that is something I've never seen another organization do this as heavily. I talked about decisions being shared. Coaching is natural. Everywhere you go, you have coaching. You talked about mentor over here before. So inside Spotify, this is, people learn this. I don't know if they learn it through boot camp, etc. But of course we need coaches. Of course we have mentors. And these are the classical 4 stances of a Scrum Master, for instance. Coach, that's me up here, I'm a coach. I have no idea what is important to the person I'm coaching or to the tribe lead that I'm coaching. I don't know better than the tribe lead or the chapter lead or this QA person. But they have some ideas. So we look at their agenda and their questions, and they have the answers. I, as a coach, I just help them get the answers out of them, make it visible, transparent to them. So this happened everywhere inside Spotify. You have your one-to-one sessions every week with your chapter lead or coach. They help you figure out how you are going to take your next steps. Mentor, yeah, there was absolutely mentorships things happening as well. I would say it was more informal in terms of you show up in this guild because you're interested and you learn, and people are happy to share. People are super happy to share. It's just part of their culture. We're very open with what they do. Their blog is vibrant. It actually has useful, meaningful stuff being shared all the time. Okay. So what are some other things I learned? We already talked about the top things. Google toolset, it works. I've never seen a company where you can go in and you say, I'm going to have a meeting in 10 minutes, and their technology works. Everybody's on the same page, everybody looks for a great video. It just works. Never technology issues. Just a side note, but it really works amazingly well. Post-mortems. Hand up if you have been in a post-mortem. So this is really part of their culture as well. He talked about it in the video. When something goes wrong, do a post-mortem. If you don't know what that is, Google it, and there's going to be examples from Google Engineering, etc., the Google Engineering book. So they do it really well. Action points gets implemented. Things happen. It's not just a place to go to whine and then nothing happens. People do this. They change. Some of the things I was not too happy about, which is also known now, they started to introduce a technical owner next to a product owner. Very interesting concept. So instead of the product owner having to optimize, maximize value and optimize total cost of ownership, that full life cycle perspective, they kind of divided it now. So there's a technical owner thinking about how to do things technically well, and the product owner thinking about market, business, and user acceptance, etc.
And they always both work.
They work in pairs. Yes and no. This was happening about when I stopped. Yes. I'm sorry to give you the yes and no answer, but that's really what it is. There was a lot of people that said, yes, I take the technical owner role and I'm not going to do anything because I think it's stupid. That happened. Right? So that person didn't do a lot. And not every team is the same. What I can say is that when you're operating on global scale, which they certainly are with over 100 million active users, technology matters. And to expect a product owner with no technical background to be able to make sound technical decisions, you likely need a partner. Yeah. Another thing I learned is that when you do A/B testing properly and you don't want your monthly active users to go down, that means at least from 1 month you need to collect data. right? To see a change or not. That meant whatever you did is going to last for at least 4 weeks before you build something one day and then wait 4 weeks to see the change. They don't do this for everything, of course. That will slow everything down immensely, but they do it quite often. So they had something called a road manager. It's not roadmap, sorry, a road manager or something like that. A person that stays with this thing, make sure that we collect the data and checks in every week to make sure that there's nothing strange with the data coming in, etc. And then at the end of it, presents it back to anyone who cares about it. Do a presentation, make sure it's valid, and if they think it's, yes, we had good results, then we decide, are we going to roll this out or not? And then they start rolling out gradually beyond the A/B testing. And that often meant rewriting parts to allow for global scale. Because you don't need to write for global scale right away before you know it's a good idea, right? So I learned that this means a team will revisit an item for a very long time, and sometimes that can be demoralizing. Everybody understood the value of it though, so they accepted it. Hack Week. Wow. I've heard about it and I read about it. I didn't see the results, but when I saw this energy of 200, I don't know how many thousand people that actually got to spend a week doing exactly what they wanted to, drive their own ideas as far as possible. I was overwhelmed just trying to go through all of those experiments at that Friday, the party Friday. So, wow, some really crazy and super doable stuff. So I say here, at least 50 of those that I saw were ready to go to market. Nothing holding them back. They had this architecture set up to very quickly go out with new ideas. So many people, they had already done it, started collecting A/B tests, etc. during just 1 week. The real pain here was to figure out which one of these are we going to support. There's so much creativity. How do we make sure that, well, we can sustain it? In the video it says no external test team. Well, that started to happen when I was there. No, what does a tech lead do, etc. The role is changing.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the technical owner issue? What's your take on the situation we have when we have 2 owners? Then each of the owners can have their own agenda.
Yeah, I don't know where you are.
I'm here, front row.
Oh. So the problem is this: I have a technical owner, that's you, and I have a product owner, that's you. So obviously you like black shirts, right? And you don't like black shirts. You like these striped shirts. So I am a developer and I need to know what I'm going to focus my 2 days left in this sprint on. Am I going to do technical stuff, remove technical debt and improve quality and scaling, etc.? Or am I going to do new feature development? Tell me.
New feature.
So which one do I listen to?
It depends if one of the owners is your boss.
So they're in the same team, the same squad, right? Who is the boss? The technical owner or the product owner? I don't know, to be honest. I mean, that's conflict that arises when you have 2 people that are supposed to own something. So that was the beef and the issue I saw with it. I hope they solved it in some good way. And I don't think they have one solution, again. For the playback squad, one of them based in Gothenburg, I'm sure that since it's so technical, how to deliver music really fast, that person already pretty much was the same technical owner. So I know that he assumed both the product owner role and the technical owner role. Problem solved for them, right? One more thing, one example, how things don't quite work at Spotify. So this is Jason Jipp. He presented this back in 2016. Yeah. So Jason Jipp is he used to be a consultant with ThoughtWorks, a really great guy, bright. And here are some of the things that he saw. I'm going to go to slide 36. So pretty much everything of what I've been telling you is already out there. So this is quite a lot of text to read. But essentially it's Kent Beck saying, if I walk into a room, within 15 seconds I want to know what they're doing and how it's going. Most squads don't have that. That's what Jason saw. Some squads, especially new ones, they're not even familiar with Agile basics. And not everybody understands autonomy versus you can do whatever you feel like. So here's another issue that he saw in the New York office. I did not see it in the Gothenburg office. I did not see it much of this in the Stockholm office. So, but some of this is absolutely, I saw on the paints as well. So that was actually all I wanted to show. That they have growth paints. They have paints like everybody else. The grass, is it greener on Spotify?
Of course.
Of course it is. Is it greener somewhere else? Yes, of course it is. I think the grass is always green. It's just different green and different stickiness and different long. And here it's more brown, and we have different brown spots of non-green grass. So, but they do have some magic juice because they have a lot of people being really happy about what they do. So I'm suggesting that we take a break because you've been listening for a long time.